All right, what is going on, you guys? My name is Bubba, and welcome back to another insane story. So this story takes place back when I was in high school, and funny enough, I'm not gonna lie. One of the benefits of me that I love about myself so much, and this is gonna sound really weird, but I love how I always had straight teeth. If you guys don't know, I have never had braces ever in my life, which I am very thankful for, because I never liked braces, nor did I ever want braces, but everyone else in my family had to get braces except me and my dad. So I guess I got my dad's good genes. Anyways, going on with the story, I remember one time, my mom ended up coming to my door when it was like 7 a.m. in the morning saying, Bubba, make sure tomorrow you know that you have to go see the dentist. And me, I don't like the dentist. I am not a fan of going to the dentist, nor do I ever like it in general. Because who in the world would want someone shoving something in your mouth? Like, I don't know. I just don't like it. And also, I really don't like their bubblegum flavor. Like, for me, it just tastes like really gross medicine. Anyways, going on with the story, I remember basically when she told me that, I told her, Mom, I really don't want to go. Like, my teeth are fine. They're straight, and I never had an issue ever. And then she told me, Bubba, you have to go to the dentist and you have to make sure you get your teeth fixed. We always have to do a checkup. You know that. Fine, is what I told her afterwards. And I basically ended up going to school in basically fear. Like, knowing I had to go to the dentist was utterly scary. And I really did not want to go, but at the same time, my parents were going to force me to go either way. So I remember when I was at school, it was during science class, and my teacher ended up coming up to me saying, okay, Bubba, so your parents are going to be here any minute now. So can you pack your stuff and get ready to go downstairs to the front door and meet with your parents? I remember when she said that, I really wanted to lie to her and say that I wasn't, but I'm not gonna lie. I can't lie to my science teacher because she was like really hot. That's a story for another time, but anyways, going on. I remember I packed up my bag and got everything ready, and I ended up going downstairs. When I went downstairs, I remember I saw my mom at the front door waiting with my dad because apparently they were both taking me to the dentist to make sure I actually behaved when I was there. And I remember when I got in the car, my parents were driving down. As my parents were driving down though, my dad ended up getting a phone call from the dentist. I was hoping that they were canceling, but then it was some lady saying, hi, so I know it's Bubba's appointment, but I'm gonna be taking over his appointment today. I want to make sure you guys understood that. So are you guys okay with me doing his checkup? I was hoping my parents were gonna say no. I was like, please say no, please say no. And then my mom says, oh, no problem, we'll go to the checkup and we'll see. Thank you for telling us. Great, thanks, Mom. I was kind of upset and annoyed, but at the same time, it is what it is. So I remember I ended up sitting in the car for half an hour thinking that some random lady that I have never met is going to literally, and I mean literally, put something in my mouth and basically check on my teeth. When we got there half an hour later, I remember I sat down at the dentist appointment with my parents. We all sat down together and we basically just waited. And I remember out the door comes a doctor. At first I thought it was just a nurse because she looked really cute and looked way too young to be a dentist. But then she ended up saying, Bubba, can you please come in? You're next up. I remember I looked at her and I ended up looking at my parents, and I stood up and I instantly just started walking up to her. When I walked up to her, I remember I asked her, wait, so are you like my dentist? She says, oh yeah, like I'm gonna be doing your checkup today. Huh? Okay. And just a reminder what this girl looked like. Like, she had like blonde hair, blue eyes, like, and she had major cherries to the point where I don't think her outfit could actually like hold those in. Anyways, going on with the story, I remember I basically went with her to the checkup, and when I got there, I remember I looked at her and I kind of was just like, laying down in the seat, doing the whole thing that she needed me to do. I opened my mouth wide and she gave me glasses to wear, and when I wore the glasses, I had to look at a TV screen that was up above. She was playing the television show Treehouse, and I'm not gonna lie, like, I'm not complaining because, it never hurts to watch cartoons. But as I was watching it, the most embarrassing thing ended up happening where, I'm not even gonna lie to you guys, as she was like kind of like putting something in my mouth and I had these sunglasses on, I remember she ended up kind of like going over like my head with her chest to look inside my teeth, kind of from like behind, I guess. And her cherries literally flopped onto my glasses. Like, her cherries literally were right in front of my eyes to the point where I didn't care what was showing on Treehouse. I was watching her. I was watching those enormous cherries, and I'm not gonna lie when I say this, and this was so embarrassing. Reminder, I was wearing sweatpants this day. I literally got bricked. I got bricked up so hard to the point where I remember I looked at her and she looked at my eggplant and she's like, oh, well, someone's excited to have good teeth. Good teeth? Hell nah. I know what I was looking at. I was looking at something that straight up made me bricked. And I remember she made it super awkward with me and like looked at me and I looked at her and I straight up told her, hey, like, listen, like, I'm not gonna lie, like, you're hot. My bad. And then she looked at me and started squeezing her chest together and she's like, oh, it's probably because of these bad boys, isn't it? What? Dude, I didn't believe this was a dentist at this point. I thought this was like Johnny Sins' sister, bro. Like, I didn't know what to think. So I remember I'm just sitting there all like, jittery and excited, thinking this is actually happening right now. And then afterwards, right as I was going on and she was going to put one final thing in my tooth to me, do a checkup on, my mom ends up walking into the dentist room, seeing what was going on and why I was taking so long. And she's like, is everything okay in here? Does he have good teeth? I remember my dentist looks at me and I look at her her. And then we're like, yeah, mom, I have really good taste. Is what I said with her putting something in my mouth. And then she said, yeah, but I'm gonna have to see him again soon because he has like a little cavity in the back of his tooth. You can't really see it, but it's back there. I'm gonna need to see him in a couple days. Wait, what? Is what I said? I was really confused because, well, I'm not gonna lie, my teeth were priceless. They were perfect. There was no way I actually had a cavity. So I remember my mom ended up leaving the room to go tell my dad, and she looked at me. She's like, you don't actually have a cavity, but I do want to see you again soon. As she's literally putting her hand up my thigh slowly. At this point, I knew that this girl wanted to do the devil's tango with me. Like, there was no way she didn't. So as I'm panicking, thinking, okay, this is like going down for real, you know, as I'm like, you know, about to sing the rap song. It's going down for real. Sorry. I got too excited. But anyways, like I was saying, knowing this was happening was utterly insane. And then I remember I ended up standing up, leaving the doctor's office slowly, and basically went to my parents saying, oh, well, it looks like I have to come back in a couple days. My parents were pretty annoyed because, let's be real here, who wants to do another half an hour drive? But me, I was excited to see my dentist again. But the funny part was, and I remember this so vividly, she ends up literally, as I'm about to leave, run outside to literally the place where we parked our car, and she handed me a toothbrush. I didn't know why it took her so long to give me a toothbrush because usually most dentists give it after the appointment, but she ends up giving it to me straight to my hand saying, hope you have a good time brushing your teeth with this. It ends up walking away. I was really confused at first, and I'm like, okay, well, that just happened. And then afterwards, when I got in the car and I opened the toothbrush, I realized that there was a note inside. The toothbrush was open, but there was something in there, which was a note. I end up taking out the toothbrush, opening the note, and I saw it was her Snapchat. And at this point, I knew that your boy was in, bro. Like, I knew what was going down, okay? So I got super hyped, and I remember I pulled out my phone, I added her on Snapchat, and I basically, like, you know, added her on there. Right when I got back home, I remember I ended up getting an ad back on Snapchat because I didn't end up going back to school. And she snaps me saying, how are those cute pearly whites? As she's still in her, like, dentist uniform, you know, pushing her cherries up. And I'm like, oh, they're good, as I send her a picture. And basically, I remember I ended up hopping on Call of Duty with the boys, telling them my experience at the dentist and how I absolutely loved it. And then for some reason, I got another Snapchat from her, and it was literally her cherries full on out at the dentist office. Bro, are there not cameras at the dentist office is what I asked her. And she said, no, silly, that's doctor-patient confidentiality. What? I remember I was so in shock, and I was like, okay, bet, so I guess I'm gonna see you in a couple days. And then she said, yeah, I'll be waiting. As she's like holding like this, like, I don't know, it was some form of thing that you put in a mouth to like look inside and like look in like detail at a person's teeth. I don't know what it is, but she stuck it in my mouth basically. And then I remember I ended up telling the boys of that, and they didn't believe me. They had no idea. And I said, watch, next time I go see her and I hit it from the back, I'm literally gonna send you guys a photo. They didn't believe me, and they said there was no way this was gonna happen. But I knew in my mind I was gonna make it happen. So what I ended up doing was I snapped her back and forth, and I kind of, you know, got comfortable talking to her and stuff. And let's just say what ended up happening next was the most insane thing ever. Now, before anything, I do apologize. I don't want to make a part 2. I really don't. Me and this dentist got a little bit in the mood. And basically where we last left off was I was gonna go do the devil's tango with my dentist inside her own home. But there's one thing that really bothered me. Knowing that I had full access to just one day go to my dentist's house and go do the devil's tango kind of stressed me out, because knowing that she had a husband and that she was married kind of just made my mind think this is a really bad idea. Which, I mean, fair enough, you know, anyone who doesn't understand basic logic, you don't go for the married woman or married man, because that would make you a home wrecker. But the fun thing about me and back in high school is that the reason I have so many crazy stories and so many exciting things that happened in my life was because I always said yes to things. From things that I know I shouldn't have done, I always just ended up saying yes. So I remember I ended up hitting her up on my phone, my dentist, and ended up snapping her saying, I am so down. Because she literally snapped me earlier saying, Baba, guess whose husband's on vacation for the next 3 weeks? You gotta come over. So knowing this in my mind, it made sense that I wouldn't get caught at all if I did go to my dentist's place and go do the devil's tango. But at the same time, it does make things really bad because it makes me a bad person. But at the same time, it was my dentist. If it was any chick from my school that was married, which is very, well, weird, but I mean, I can't say I've never seen it before. That's a story for another time. But going on with the story, I remember I basically decided to say screw it and go see her. Well, I ended up snapping her saying, okay, so like when's the best time for me to come over? Because like, you know, I don't want to bother anyone. I don't want to get in the way of things. And also I don't want your husband to find out. She said, oh, like basically anytime like after I'm done work would be perfect. Actually, I'm planning on leaving early on Wednesday if you want to come over then. When I knew she was leaving early from work on Wednesday, that would be the perfect timing because she ends work literally 1 hour after I end school. So I said, all right, like that sounds good, because right after I'm done school, she'll instantly be done work and I can just head over straight to her place. So I remember on Tuesday, I was really excited and I decided to hop on Xbox that night and say this this to the boys. Yo, boys, guess who's gonna go do the dentist? At this point, the boys were sick of it. Because I'm not gonna lie, one of them ended up telling me, bro, you literally said this last week when you went to go see your dentist and you didn't end up doing anything, bro. Like, you don't gotta lie to us. Just be real, man. But I knew I was telling the truth. Like, you guys know this feeling when you have to prove someone wrong, but you didn't prove them wrong yet, and it's just so time consuming, but they get on your butt every time you mention it. Well, that was basically this scenario. And knowing this, it gave me even more motivation to go to my dentist's house and go do the devil's tango. So I remember I ended up telling them over Xbox, bro, you have no idea what you're talking about. Trust me, man. I'm gonna go literally go slam the dentist on her own workplace and do it. In reality, I was gonna do it at you know, her house, but you know what I mean. I was trying to be over dramatic with the boys because that's how you usually are. But of course, knowing every person nowadays, they didn't believe me. You know, it makes sense how people don't believe the stuff I say, but at the same time, knowing I lived through it, it's kind of hilarious. Anyways, going on, I remember I basically had to prove that I was gonna do this. I had to do it. So the next day, when I woke up in the morning, I remember I got dressed, I got ready, and I also picked up a rubber from under my bed that I was gonna use on the dentist, because obviously protection first, ladies and gentlemen. And then I ended up going to school that day. When I went to school, I ended up meeting up with some of the boys that were on Xbox the night before, and they all looked at me saying, bro, Bubba, are you actually gonna go do it today? One of them said, and I ended up telling them, yeah, trust, bro, like this time I'm gonna put something in her mouth instead of her putting something in mine. Yeah, I didn't really think that coming through because it was really weird, and actually it was kind of hilarious the more I think about it now. And then I remember one of the guys ended up saying, bro, you better actually send a photo when you do it, bro. Like, I'm being for real, bro. Like, if you don't actually do it, I'm gonna actually troll you, bro. When he said this, I knew I had to. Because if you guys do ever have like the group called the boys, or you know, have this friend group that's just full of guys that like, you know, like to pick on each other a lot, when they have something to pick about, they will do it till the ends of the earth, until you're basically on your grave, and they'll still make the same joke. So I remember I had to do this, knowing that the only way to clear this off my name was to basically do it was gonna happen. So every class I went to that day, I remember I was in desperate shock. I was like, okay, I gotta do this, I gotta do this, I was gonna do this. And I remember when the last bell rang for school to end, I instantly got up and ran for the doors. Like, I didn't even let the bell finish ringing. That's when you know it's actually something really exciting. I think the last time I actually did something like that was when my parents got a brand new console for me and I wanted to play it so bad. But anyways, going on with the story, I remember I ended up running out the door and I basically started heading straight for my dentist's house. Funny enough, she didn't actually live that far from the school. She was actually like a couple blocks away, which is kind of weird, but at the same time, I mean, hey, it's just a benefit for me at the end of the day. And when I started running to her house, I remember it was like a 20-minute walk, and when I officially got there, I walked up the doorstep. She lived in a really nice house. Like, this house was gigantic. I could even almost say it was a mansion at this point. And then I remember I basically went on my phone, texted her that I was here, and then she told me to go around the back. Apparently, she didn't want me going through the front door because her front door has like a camera. So I ended up going around the house, around the back, and I ended up coming in from the back door. When I did, I remember she opened the door and she was in a robe. She was not basically wearing anything under that robe, and I remember she basically told me to sit down and offer me a glass of water. I don't know why. I guess she thought I was really nervous, but in a way, I was motivated. I literally said, nah, let's just get straight down to business, you know? As if I knew what I was doing, when in reality, I kind of didn't. I still was kind of nervous. Anyways, me and her, we instantly decided to, you know, exchange a couple words, aka, oh, you're hot, is all I really said to her. And then afterwards, she ended up grabbing my wrist and taking me upstairs, and we ended up going to the bedroom, and yes, we literally did do the devil's tango. And I'm not gonna lie, for her being my dentist, I gotta say, she had some really nice teeth. Like, knowing her, she definitely did floss properly. Anyways, going on with the story, I remember me and her went at it for, I want to say, almost an hour and a half. I don't know how I kept up knowing I was still in high school, but it worked out. And then basically, out of nowhere, and I mean this when I say this, the doorbell rang in the middle of it. I remember I was in shock and I was shaking. And I remember she ended up standing up from the bed saying, no one should be here. What in the world? And she ended up going down the stairs with her robe on. Me, I was in the bedroom not wearing anything. So obviously I'm in like basic shock at this point. Knowing my legs were basically numb as well, I didn't know what to do. So I remember I decided to kind of just start getting ready, getting my pants on and my clothes, and basically start leaving. But as I exit the bedroom door and I start heading down the stairs, I look over the staircase and I see that her son literally came home. Not her husband, her actual son. And if you guys don't know, her son was surprisingly someone that was like in college. I don't know what this college person's gonna think, that I'm literally doing the devil's tango with his mom while her husband is gone on vacation. Like, oops, I guess daddy's not gonna like that. Or do I just come down the stairs and say, hey, I'm your new daddy? Like, I didn't know what to say. So I remember I basically ended up running back up the stairs and basically hiding under the bed. I remember I really had to do this because it was just really scary for me. And then afterwards, I want to say like 10 seconds later, I hear someone coming up the stairs. In my my mind, I thought it was hopefully my dentist coming back up the stairs to say everything was clear and I can go home. But then right when I realize it and look at the door, I see her son coming into the bedroom arguing with his own mother. Well, aka my dentist. Basically, they had some argument about like my dentist's dad not like listening and paying attention and basically not doing his part in the family tree. I have no idea. Apparently some weird stuff was going on, and it made sense why my dentist didn't care much about her own husband, because apparently they already had some, you know, wife and husband issues that I guess a couple gets into sometimes. But in my mind, I knew at that point when I was hearing this argument and I was hearing my dentist's son basically complain saying how he just wanted a normal family, it made me feel bad. I actually felt really bad knowing what happened. I didn't really want to be there anymore. And knowing that I already did the devil's tango with his own mom already made me feel worse. I remember I basically just stayed there all quiet and stuff, and I want to say like 10 minutes went by of me hearing this whole entire argument. And when you hear an argument for 10 minutes straight, you guys gotta understand, it sucks. It makes you feel worse and worse the minute it goes by. After like 10 minutes though, I remember the son went out the door all angrily because his mom wasn't cooperating, aka my dentist. And basically my dentist came back into the room saying, "Oh my goodness, Bubba, I am so sorry you had to hear all that. That was so embarrassing." I remember I ended up coming out of under the bed, and I was already fully clothed because I was changing while I was under there. And basically I ended up telling her saying, "Hey, listen, I don't think it's cool if we see each other again." You know what I mean? As if I was like a full-on grown-up. I remember she looked at me and said, "Oh, like, no, it's fine. Like, don't worry about it. Like, it's just like a thing that's happening with the family. Like, I'm planning on divorcing my husband." And when she told me that she was divorcing her husband, I ended up saying, "Honestly, I don't think you should." She ended up looking at me all weird saying, "What? Why did you tell me not to divorce my husband? That's really odd of you." And I ended up telling her, "Well, knowing your son, honestly, from everything I just heard, I think it's not worth it. The kid just wants a normal family." Even though the kid was like 20 and was in college. But still, I basically said how, you know, she should just try working things out with her husband and just see if, you know, they fix things. But then I realized that my dentist was feeling really sad after I said that. She sat down on the bed wearing only her robe and said, "Baba, you gotta understand, my husband cheated on me." "Oh, okay, that sucks," is what I told her. And then I told her, "Well, you gotta understand, blood is thicker than water." I saw that in like a movie somewhere, so I thought it'd be cool to say at the moment because we were talking about family. Like, I don't know, it was either that or I pull out something from Dom Toretto, which, I mean, don't get me wrong, family is everything, but like, it is what it is. Anyways, going on with the story, I remember at that moment, I basically just wanted to get out of there. I wasn't comfortable being there anymore. So I ended up basically getting my backpack and everything that I had for school, and I ended up leaving. But before I left, I remember my dentist looked at me and said, "Bubba, can we please just see each other one more time?" I looked at her and said, "I don't know, we'll see what the future holds." And I ended up leaving. After that day, I remember I went home and I hopped on Xbox, and basically from there, I remember all the boys were already freaking out when I joined the Xbox party. Now, I found this weird because I didn't send them anything, nor did I say anything to them. It was weird because I remember I was so motivated and I forgot to take evidence and proof that I ended up doing the devil's tango with her. But apparently they found out somehow. And it was so weird because I remember asking them, "Wait, guys, how do you guys even know that I did it with the dentist?" And he ended up saying, "Dude, some college kid literally ended up posting about a guy named Bubba and how he was gonna kill him." Wait, what? Now I had her son literally going after me, and I have no idea how he found out that I was actually in that room at the moment.
Oh boy, just great. Another bathroom story. Outstanding. Now, I know I've already done a bathroom story before if you guys have seen the channel, and you guys literally destroyed it. And I remember mentioning one of my like recent videos that, you know, I had a story time about how I did it in a Walmart bathroom. And funny enough, this is actually true. I did the devil's tango in the Walmart bathroom. Now, how did this happen is pretty weird, but honestly, all I gotta say is that I feel like bathrooms are like our new safe haven. Like, honestly, I feel so much safer in a bathroom. Like, I don't know why. I guess probably because they have locks on the door, and my bedroom doesn't have a lock on the door, and anyone could just walk in. You know what? That's a story for another time. All right, yo, what is going on, you guys? My name's Bubba, and welcome back to another crazy story. So like I said in the title, yes, this is actually about me doing the devil's tango in the Walmart bathroom. Now, I know what you're thinking. Obviously, you guys are probably typing down in the comments being like,
"Oh my goodness, this guy has such fake stories. Like, I believe none of them are real."
and you know what? We could argue all day, but this is my life, and this is literally what happened. So let's get straight into it. So obviously, this story starts back in high school. So back in high school, I remember I was just chilling, doing my own thing, and I had a social studies class. You guys don't know what social studies is? Well, it sucks because it's literally just talking about all the past mistakes that this world have done, which I guess, you know, this continues happening. But anyways, when I entered my social studies class, I saw our seating arrangement change. Now, if you guys don't know what a seating arrangement is, basically, like, we have like our own desks, and, you know, like, usually we would change it into groups or into rows. You know, it's just a mix and match kind of thing. And I remember my desk changed to a spot beside a really hot chick, or girl. Sorry, I know you guys don't want me to say chick, so I'm gonna say girl. Now, this girl was outstanding. outstanding, and she was amazing. She looked great. She had a beautiful scent on her. And I'm not saying go sniff girls, but I'm saying she smelled good. And I remember, like, you know, as we were sitting beside socials and stuff, we had like a socials class on, like, I don't know, I think we were talking about something. I don't remember what exactly, because I kept like getting distracted by the chick beside me. But I remember me and her were kind of like nudging each other. We were being kind of flirtatious here and there and stuff like that. And this went on for like almost a week. Now, funny enough, I didn't ask for her Snapchat, nothing, because she told me like she doesn't have Snapchat, which is a total false information, by the way. I think every girl has Snapchat. If they don't, then they're definitely hiding something. But, you know, she always told me she didn't. And obviously, you know, as time went on, I remember one day as we were in social studies class, she was looking at me and saying, "What are you doing after school?" Now, me being the weird, annoying, kind of shy person, I was like, "Oh, nothing, you know, just probably gonna go home, you know, just to work out." You know, I said some BS that wasn't actually gonna happen. And then she's like, "Oh, I mean, like, do you want to come to the mall with me? I have to do some shopping." Now, I never got invited to the mall by a chick before at this time. It was kind of weird thinking about it, because I was worried it's gonna be like another sugar mama situation. But surprising enough, you know, she was pretty good off, you know, on her own. So I was like, yeah, sure, why not? So I remember after school came, me and her, we ended up, you know, getting our things and we head over to the mall. So fun fact, the mall was literally super close to us. Like, I could literally say the mall was like maybe like a 5-minute walk from my high school. And as we were, you know, at the mall, we were walking around, we went around the food court and stuff. I remember my friend was texting me and he was saying, "Yo, are you getting on Xbox? Like, are you gonna hop on today?" And me being the dumb person I was like, "No, dude, like, I'm hanging out with a hot chick right now. Like, she's so hot. She wants me to hang out with her in the mall." And obviously my friends are like, "Dude, like, for the boys, bro. Like, what are you doing, bro?" I don't know. Honestly, I regret it to this day, because for the boys, man, for the boys. But going on, I remember as we were roaming around this mall, she was like kind of like again, nudging me. And obviously, like, you know, it got to the point where she was like getting close to me and stuff. And then I remember we went over to like a sports shop or whatever. I think it was like Sport Check or something. I'm not sure what. And we entered in there. And she was telling me how like she plays golf and stuff. And, you know, she wants to be a golfer and stuff like that. I don't know. It was like a whole bunch of cap. Like, it sounded like cap. I'm going to be honest. But I remember she was like telling me like, "Oh, like, I'm going to hold the putter like this." And I know a lot of us have seen in movies, like, you know, that romantic like putter grab where like the guy goes around her and like, you know, kind of like thrusts her and helps her use the putter. I don't know. It was some, I don't know how to explain it in like a PG form, so this video doesn't get demonetized. But you know what I mean. So I do that with her, and, you know, I kind of like show her how to use it, because obviously there's like those demo putter areas where you could like practice your puttering. And then she was like telling me like how she like liked it as I was like holding her and stuff. And it got really, really intense in a way. So I remember after she said she wanted to go get snacks at Walmart. So this is where things get very interesting, and I think you guys are gonna start freaking out after this one. She literally takes us to Walmart, or me to Walmart, I should say. She kind of like, you know, hangs out around me and, you know, does that kind of like, you know, "Oh, like, this is cool. This is cool. Oh, this is a good snack." And then we kind of like really like got close at some moment. I don't remember what. I think she was showing me a lightsaber or some toy. I don't remember. And then we were both holding it. And then after that, like, I guess we started like kind of making out in the toy section. I don't know if there was any kids around. I hope not, actually, the more I think about it. And then she's like, "Follow me." Now, she literally grabbed me kind of by the wrist. Well, thumb and wrist. It was kind of like a weird handhold in a way. And she took me over to the Walmart bathroom. Now, she told me, "Stay here, and in 30 seconds, come into the bathroom." She goes into like the disability bathroom, or, you know, the bathroom where it has like that cool like guy sitting on the cool chair thing. I always thought it was a toilet seat when I was younger, but I guess it's like a chair now. I don't know. Or a wheelchair. Oh boy, if it's a wheelchair, I feel bad. And basically 30 seconds later, I went into that bathroom and she was like, "Take off your pants." And as obviously you guys do know it, yes, this is actually something that happened. We did the devil's tango in the Walmart bathroom. This went on for, I want to say like 10 minutes, because I thought it was going to be a quickie, bro. Like, I had to make it quick, simple, and straight out. You know what I'm saying? And obviously, you know, me and her, we were able to make that happen because, you know, I guess we were both really professionals at doing the devil's tango. So after that, I remember like she like instantly started putting her clothes on. She went out of the bathroom first, and then me standing there, like, I just finished getting ready, and I was just like, you know, fixing my hair and stuff in the mirror so it doesn't look like I got like totally just destroyed in the bathroom. And then as I was fixing my hair, she left, and I want to say like 2 seconds later, an old guy walked in, and the old guy just looks at me. And he's like, "Oh, sorry, I didn't know this was taken. I didn't know you were in the lineup." This old guy definitely knew what was going on. I'm sorry to break it to you guys, but this old guy definitely knew what happened. And he just turned around and didn't really want to question it. And I remember I left the bathroom and I like left. And for some reason, there was some Walmart worker just kind of like looking at me. And he was kind of staring me down. And I saw the old guy actually going up to the Walmart worker and like pointing at me. And let's just say, as usual as I usually do, I walked out of there and kind of just ran outside and ran back to the school so I can just disappear. Because I don't know, I guess school is kind of a safe haven as well, the more I think about it. And long story short, I never talked to the chick again because that was the most dumbest thing I ever had to do. Now, moral of the story is be careful and don't do it in public places. In reality, get your own place, get a bed, and do the devil's tango. There, respect your parents. Now, like I always say, make sure you guys leave a like and subscribe. Thank you guys so much for liking this story and enjoying this. And if you guys watch all the way through, you're outstanding.
I remember my therapist ended up telling me, Baba, you should just sit down right now. We should talk about this. And instead of sitting across from me, she sat beside me and she put her hand on my thigh and things got insane. Yo, what is going on, you guys? My name's Bubba and welcome back to another really embarrassing, but I gotta say extreme story. So this story all takes place back when I was in grade 12, or actually 3 months after I graduated grade 12. And I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I'm gonna confess the truth here. I had major anger issues. I'm not gonna lie, to this day, I feel like I still have some anger issues here and there, but honestly, I've learned to detain it down and basically calm down, I guess. And I guess one of the ways I do that is by telling these really embarrassing stories about my life. But I remember basically back when I was in grade 12 or just graduating, like I said earlier, I had major anger to the point where the way I would kind of release my anger was doing the devil's tango with other women. It wasn't to the point where I would do the devil's tango for my own satisfaction. It got to the point where I would do it just so I could let my anger out. And obviously that leads to a lot of dark stuff. And I'm not gonna lie to you, I made a video on the channel about it, but I will say this, it really made me not proud of who I was as a person, especially after high school. Because obviously after high school, when you graduate, things start to change. Life really starts hitting you in a different way and things get more serious in life. But I remember around this time, my parents really started to notice that I started getting angry more easily. And basically that led to them actually one time walking up to me in my bedroom saying, Bubba, do you think maybe it's good for you to get a therapist? Just, you know, to release yourself? What? Mom, no, I don't want to take therapy. Therapy's dumb. Now, if you guys did not know and already realized, back when I was younger, or even still actually nowadays, I'm not gonna lie to you, I don't believe therapy is real. I don't believe therapy is actually something that is useful or helpful or actually even worth putting your money into. Obviously, I don't know, many people like therapy, but for me, I was never a fan of it. Because who wants to sit there just talking to a random stranger about all your issues? Like, you could do that with literally anyone. And the advice they give back is just another question that you have to deal with and make you, I guess, go to a realization. But obviously at this time, I believe therapy wasn't for me and it still isn't. But going on with the story, I remember my mom was really convinced, and one thing led to another. She ended up opening her laptop in front of me and she started opening up different therapy clinics to basically send me to. And me, I like basically didn't want to go because I already felt like in my mind I already had an escape to basically releasing my anger, which was me doing the devil's tango. But obviously I didn't want to tell my mom that. So I remember it got to the point where basically she ended up telling me, okay, Bubba, I booked you an appointment for this therapy. Just try it out. Just see if you enjoy it. Please, Bubba. Okay, Mom, I'll do it, is what I told her. And the next day came around and me and my mom, we drove over down to this therapy clinic. Now, when we got to the place, I remember I ended up sitting down just in the waiting room when my mom went to go check me in. And I was just kind of sitting there looking at all the signs that basically, you know, have like motivational speeches on it. But me, obviously, I hated them. I ended up just looking down and I ended up going on my phone, actually playing Clash of Clans. And I remember 20 minutes went by and out of nowhere, I ended up seeing this really, really hot lady that was wearing a really tight skirt walk up to me and say, oh, you must be Bubba. I remember I ended up looking up to see who I was talking to, and out of nowhere, I am not joking, my jaw dropped and my eyes went wide. Like, I was mesmerized and aroused by how this girl looked. Like, she looked amazing because she was so hot. And on top of that, her cherries were literally popping out of her button-up shirt. Like, I was mind blown and I was so attracted to her. And I looked at her saying, yeah, that's me. What's up? She ended up looking at me smiling and she said, well, I'm ready for you in my office now. Okay, cool. And me and her, we ended up going to the office and we ended up basically sitting across from each other. And she basically told me to start talking about myself. So that's exactly what I did. I told her I was a gamer. I told her that, you know, I would do the devil's tango a lot with many different types of women, and how I had goals and dreams of becoming, well, a professional gamer of some sorts, or, you know, just anything really. I don't know. At this time, right after I graduated, I won't lie to you, I didn't really know where I was going with life, like I said earlier. So obviously I was just trying to basically tell her like the basic lines of myself, of who I am and what I want to be. But as I was saying all this, one thing I found really weird about this therapist was that randomly at certain moments, she'd be like, oh, like, I don't know, you could be a model. Like, are you sure you want to be like a gamer? Oh, so like, do you ever see yourself, I don't know, maybe like being on the Devil's Hub? From how much of the Devil's Tango you
do? And she would ask me all these questions that sounded like good, normal questions to ask a normal person, but at the same time, the way she would say them is like in a flirtatious way. It got to the point where I'm not gonna lie to you, I ended up just kind of zoning out every time she talked because I ended up looking at her cherries instead because, well, it was either that or I look at the sign behind her that was of a cat saying something motivational. So I ended up just staring at her cherries, and honestly, 100% that this therapist definitely noticed that I was doing that. And she looked at me and said, Baba, you do realize my eyes are up here, right? Yeah, sorry. No, I'm just zoned out, I guess. I guess you could say it's from me doing the devil's tango. And at that moment, I guess she looked at me and said, Baba, what makes you angry? Now, obviously, there was a lot of answers to this question, but one thing I did end up saying was, oh, I guess like people like really like pushing my buttons, I guess, and just like, being rude about it. Because at the time, I'm not gonna lie, every time she like would say something, it sounded like she was trying to press my buttons more than actually, be a therapist. I remember it got to a point where a therapy session was over because her phone ended up ringing, and yeah, one thing led to another. That was the end of our first session together. Now, obviously, I ended up getting up and leaving, but as I was leaving out the front door, I remember she put her hand on my shoulder and said, I really hope you come back. And she walked away. Now, I'm not gonna lie, at this moment, I got bricked. I'm not gonna lie. I was severely bricked, and I was really just attracted to this therapist. And I remember as I was on the way home with my mother, my mom looks at me and says, so Bubba, what do you think about the session? Do you think you're gonna go again? Oh, I'm definitely going back, is what I told my mom, and my mom ended up smiling. I remember 1 week went by and I ended up going back to see this therapist. And when I went to go see her, I remember I got really excited and I decided to wear something more, I guess, appealing to the average woman. And basically, I ended up heading down there. When I got there, I ended up sitting in the waiting room waiting for her. I saw that she was already with a different client, but I could just tell from the way she was interacting with this other person, she didn't feel the same as what she did with me. Like, for example, she wasn't in any way, flirtatious. She wasn't touchy. She didn't really like, stare at him like the way she would look at me. So I knew there was definitely a difference between me and other clients that she had. And I remember when she saw me at the waiting room, she ended up running up to me, surprisingly, and actually giving me a hug and say, hey, Bubba, I missed you. Welcome back. Do you want to head into the office right now? Yeah, I guess it's my time, isn't it? Oh, yeah, of course it's your time, silly. And I remember this therapist ended up grabbing my wrist and actually dragging me to her office and shutting the door and locking it. Now, the first time I met this therapist, she didn't lock the door, but this time she apparently did for some reason, which got me really questioning what was gonna go on here. I remember this therapist looks at me and tells me, Bubba, you should sit down. Okay, yeah. So tell me, how has your week been? Have you been releasing anger recently? And I already knew what she meant by this question because, like I said earlier, the way I would release anger was me doing the devil's tango. But I ended up being honest with her saying, nah, I haven't done it at all, to be honest, is what I told her. And she said, oh, well, like, maybe I should help you out with that. I remember this therapist ended up taking off everything right in front of me. And she said, do you like it, Bubba? And well, one thing led to another. This therapist got me bricked and we ended up doing the devil's tango at the therapy office. Now, I don't know if this was part of the therapy, but to be honest, in my mind, it probably wasn't. Maybe this therapist was just in the mood and, she found the best person that could do it with her, and that was me because I was the master of doing the devil's tango. But one thing I will say was that my mind was blown when this was happening. I remember we were in there for a good hour and a half and her phone alarm went off, and basically she had to get ready as fast as possible for her next client. After she put everything on, she ended up walking me out of her office and said, I hope that released your anger for this session, and ended up basically letting me go. At that moment, I'm not gonna lie to you, I guess the therapy ended up becoming release anger therapy. I have really no idea what that was, but I remember from weeks on end for I want to say a month and a half, that's the only thing we would do every time I went to her office. I would go there, do the devil's tango, and basically come back home. But then I'm not gonna lie to you, months later on, I ended up stopped seeing this therapist because, well, I ended up getting a girlfriend and I decided to stay loyal to her and basically cut off the therapist. Even though my girlfriend knew I was going to therapy, she found it hilarious how I ended up just stopping going to therapy for her. But I just told her I graduated therapy because, well, I was already the master of doing the devil's tango. Anyways, but the real question is, would you guys do your therapist? And if you would, then just follow for more embarrassing stories. Peace out, guys. I remember when I walked into my counselor's office, I ended up looking around confused on why she wasn't there, and then out of nowhere she ended up coming in, but she was wearing nothing but a robe. Like, what was she doing? Yo, what is going on, you guys? My name's Bubba and welcome back to another really embarrassing story. So this story all takes place back when I was in high school, and this was actually my grade 10 year. Now in grade 10, I'm not gonna lie to you, I never had good experiences with the counselors in my high school. Like, I never understood why counselors were even a thing in high school, because let's be real here, if you're really having a hard time, are you really gonna go to the one person that only cares about your education system?
system. Like, I think the counselors are only really useful when it comes to actually getting you inside a university or a college, not for actual counseling. But I remember basically there was one time where in my grade 10 year, I'm not gonna lie to you, I wasn't doing the best in school. I'm not gonna lie, I would usually skip school to go out and do the devil's tango with many different women, and it got to a point where my absences started becoming a real problem with the school system. And I remember there was one time when I was sitting in my homeroom class and I was just basically trying to catch up on some work. And as I'm just writing down a bunch of things on a piece of paper, out of nowhere, I ended up seeing my teacher walk up to me, my homeroom teacher. She walks up to me and says, Baba, I'm not gonna lie to you. You've been absent a lot recently, and apparently the counselor wants to go and talk to you. She wants to talk to me, is what I said. Yeah, apparently it's something about your grades and basically what your future holds for you. I don't really know. I ended up looking at her really confused, and I just said, you know what, whatever. And I ended up basically getting up from my chair and started heading towards the counselor's office. Now, I think this was gonna be one of the first times I ever went to go see the counselor. And the funny part was that the counselor that was already there in our school at the time was not one that was actually like permanently supposed to be in our school system. So I was literally about to go talk to a counselor that wasn't even supposed to be the actual counselor. Going on with the story though, I remember I ended up going to the office, and when I did, I sat down on the side, basically waiting for her to let me in. But as I was waiting, I remember someone else came out of her office, and it was a young girl. And this girl ended up coming out and started crying over and over again because apparently she got like a B in her grade. I have really no idea, but she started like sobbing and crying when she came out of that office, and I knew this was definitely going to be the end of me until it wasn't. Because I remember what happens next, honestly, was really surprising. Because when I got up and I ended up going into her office, I ended up seeing a really hot lady sitting there with her cherries out, and she just looked really, really good. Like, I am not joking. Like, I was really surprised that a counselor was wearing a really nice, like, thin black dress. Like, she looked really, really good. And when I looked at her, I ended up having my eyes open wide, and I looked at her saying, hey, like, what's going on? I'm Bubba. Hi, Bubba. Yeah, I need to talk to you. So can you just sit down with me real quick? Yeah, sure. What's up? I basically ended up trying to play it cool, I guess, in a way. I don't really know what kind of person says what's up to their teacher, but at the same time, if you do, I guess comment it down below. But I remember I sat down and I basically ended up saying like, oh, so like, what's the problem? Yeah, so the thing is, Bubba, apparently you have a lot of absences on your attendance. Can you tell me why that is? Yeah, I just, I don't know. I just haven't been really feeling myself lately. I don't know. I just don't want to be in school sometimes, I guess I could say. Which was a totally big lie, because there was no way I was actually going to tell the counselor that the reason I was not showing up to school was to go do the devil's tango. So obviously, I remember from there, she ended up looking at me saying, okay, well, Bubba, if there's something going on at home, you know you can talk to me, right? Like, I am your counselor. Which in reality, she actually wasn't. But I ended up just saying, yeah, that's all good. Yeah, I understand. I'll come in here if I do need to talk to you, I guess. Okay, good. Also, I do want to see you regularly now. So if you can come in at least every day before your third block, that would be fantastic. Wait, what? Why? Because obviously, I don't want you running off, and I rather you be actually in school, and this is my way of knowing. Okay, sure, you know what, whatever. At that moment, I remember I got up and left the counselor's office really upset, because obviously who would want to go to the counselor's office every day? It was already bad enough I had to go there that day. But let me tell you guys, things went from worse to, I want to say, better, because the next day when I ended up showing up to my counselor's office, I ended up sitting down with her, and she told me, so how are you feeling today? Do you feel like running off? No, I'm in school, aren't I? Is what I told her. Yeah, you are in school. Okay, so I do have a couple questions though I want to ask you. Yeah, sure, shoot. What are they? Okay, well, first thing, how do you feel about your future? My future? Where do you see yourself going in like the next like 5 years from now? Now, I'm not gonna lie to you. At this time, I did not know what my future held for me. Like, I did not know back when I was in grade 10 that I was gonna be a YouTuber telling you the stories about my life. So I ended up looking at her saying, oh, I don't know, maybe like a businessman of some sort. So I would like to, you know, be in business, I guess. I don't really know, to be honest. I really don't have a plan. And do you feel sad that you don't have a plan? What? Why should I feel sad? And at that point, she started questioning me on things that honestly, I wasn't really sure I really knew the answers to, and if my life was actually going to be meaningful 5 years from now. Honestly, it got me really sad and really just not happy to be there. And honestly, for a counselor that's supposed to make me happy to be in school, she really did the opposite. But after when I started to feel sad, I ended up putting my head down, and my counselor noticed. And she decided to stand up, sit in the chair beside me, and she put her hand on my thigh. She said, Bubba, don't worry, you're still a very charming man, and honestly, you will be something one day. I promise you that. Boy, was she not wrong. But one thing I will say, damn, this counselor put her hand on my thigh, bro. Like, She definitely wanted some. Obviously, at this time, I didn't notice that, obviously, because, well, I was actually really sad about my 5 years in the future time, I guess. But I remember I ended up looking at her and I said, really? Like, you think so? Yeah, Bubba, I'm sure you're holding a lot of great things for your future. And I remember me and her, we ended up having like an eye-to-eye moment until another student walked in saying, oh, is it my turn to talk to you, Miss Counselor? And yeah, I got up, I ended up leaving, and she ended up winking at me as she was sitting across from the other student that just walked in as I was leaving the door. And at that moment, I knew something was definitely up between me and the counselor, but I wasn't sure what exactly until what happens next. Because I remember the next thing that ends up happening was I ended up showing up the next day. And next day when I showed up, I remember I ended up sitting down with her. And when I sat down, I said, hey, like, how's it going? Oh, good. Now that you're here. Cool. Yeah. So, I just want to talk to you about yesterday. I kind of thought what I wanted for my future. At that moment, I remember I ended up telling her like basically like my plan about going to school and stuff, which none of it ever ended up happening. Thanks to you guys for actually following the channel and basically watching these stories. But going on with the story, I remember she ended up basically like, you know, being happy that I found out my future. And then she ended up asking me the one question that I really did not think of at the time. So, Bubba, do you ever see yourself, I don't know, maybe getting married in the future? Married is what I told her. And I didn't really know what to say at this moment. I never thought about actually being in a heavy relationship back when I was in grade 10 because the only thing I was good at was, well, you guys may know it as the Devil's Tango. And that was the only thing I actually knew and cared about. Obviously, I wasn't going to tell her that. So I said, yeah, you know, if I meet the right woman, then obviously I would want to marry her and, yeah, I guess, you know, get married and stuff. But that's a really rare chance. She ended up looking at me kind of in question. And she said, well, Bubba, what is your ideal woman? At that moment, I started like describing like, you know, I want her to be attractive. I want her to be friendly. I want her to be, you know, someone that likes me for me. You know, all the typical stuff that the average kid would say if they had to describe their dream crush or, you know, girlfriend or whatever. And basically she looks at me and she ends up standing up once again. She came up and sat beside me and said, you know, you just described me, right? Huh? And at that moment, I remember she ends up turning my head towards her and she ends up kissing me. My counselor literally made out with me for like a good 10 minutes with her. And then out of nowhere, I ended up saying, wait, what if another student walks in? Oh, don't worry about it, Bubba. No one's gonna walk in. I canceled everything else today. And at that moment, she ended up basically unbuttoning her shirt. And well, I'm not gonna say any more than that other than me and her, we ended up doing the Devil's Tango. At that moment, my mind was blown. I did not realize that I just did the Devil's Tango with my counselor, but at the same time, it wasn't a surprise. Because like I said, the only thing I was good at back in high school was doing the Devil's Tango. I remember me and her would have these regular appointments of doing the Devil's Tango afterwards. And I'm not gonna lie to you, 1 month later, she ended up actually leaving the school system because once again, like I said earlier in the story, she wasn't supposed to be my actual counselor. And well, I guess she took me out of like the counseling system because, well, the new counselor that came back, that was supposed to be our original counselor, never wanted to see me. So in a way, I guess she kind of made my school year more exciting, like a counselor should have. But if you watch this story till the end, make sure you guys follow for more embarrassing stories just like this one. Peace out, guys. Okay, so one thing you guys should know about me is that I'm not really one for gang affiliation. Like, don't get me wrong, I get it out there. There's actual gangsters that are willing to die, you know, for a brother or another. But for me specifically, I'm not gonna lie to you. If there's such thing as gangs out there, I'd rather not be a part of one. Because me being in a gang is like me basically spitting in God's face, asking for forgiveness at the same time. It's just super bizarre to me. Because like, you know, you're loving someone so much, but yet it's just such a dangerous thing to be in. But at the same time though, one thing I will say is that today's story does get insane because, well, let's just say I was almost a part of a gang affiliation. And basically, let's just say dating a mafia boss's daughter isn't easy. But let's just get straight into this insane story. Yo, what is going on, you guys? My name's Bubba, and welcome back to another crazy story. So today's story is honestly a quick one because honestly, I'm not gonna lie to you, I knew what I was getting myself into and had to jump out of it instantly. But honestly, the story starts off back when I was in high school. You see, back in high school, I was just a basic kid that literally did whatever walked. You know, if it was walking, I'm going to do the Devil's Tango with it. And I remember one time there was a new girl in our school who recently just joined in, except a lot of people did not want to be around this girl for some reason. And I remember I walked up to one of the girls that I already was like good friends with, and yes, I did do the Devil's Tango with her as well. And I asked her the basic common question of, why don't you like this girl? I remember she looked at me and she told me, oh, like apparently like she's like really gangstery and like, I don't know, like she said she could kill all of us with like one phone call. I had no idea what this meant. I guess like calling the police in my mind was the first thing I was thinking about, because who else could you call called to kill people? I have no idea. And in my mind, I'm gonna be honest here, the only time I heard about gangsters was literally in probably Grand Theft Auto. Other than that, if it wasn't from GTA, well then I don't know who else is she gonna call other than the Green Gang. So I remember basically I decided that it would be smart for me to maybe walk up to her and have a conversation with her. Either I just walk up to her and, you know, try to pull some riz, or I just say hello and realize that this was a mistake and just basically walk away. Anyways, the whole point is I want to go talk to this girl. All right, so that's what I did. I remember I ended up walking around the school with one of my buddies to basically find who this girl was, and honestly, she stuck out like a sore thumb. In a crowd of people, like anyone could really notice her, because I remember when I looked into this crowd of people that was literally in like the foyer of our school where everyone was surrounded before school started, she was definitely sticking out because she was wearing this outfit that like made her seem super odd. Like it was such a girly girl outfit, but at the same time, everything she was wearing was more expensive than my, well, entire outfit. Like no joke, including my backpack and the textbooks in it. It was super weird and I found it super funny. So I remember I decided to walk up to her, and when I did, I remember she saw me and she looked the other way. Now this is the one time I'm actually gonna say this. This is the one girl that I've seen actually not interested in me. As a guy who actually, like, you know, goes around and, you know, basically does the devil's tango with almost every chick, this one girl was just not interested in me whatsoever. So I remember I did the same thing, because once a girl shows no interest to you, you show them the same thing back. You show no interest. And since this girl was always begging for attention apparently from a bunch of other guys wanting her, I remember one time I ended up basically sitting in the cafeteria, and when she walked in, a bunch of guys decided to stand up and go say hello to her. As for me, I sat there and I basically ignored her. I remember she saw me and she looked at me and she knew that one time I was going to approach her, but I didn't because I walked away, right? Because she didn't want my attention. But this time when I was in the cafeteria, I decided to not even, you know, notice she was there. So what did she end up doing? Well, since I made the alpha male move of not going towards my prey and waiting for her to come to me, I basically waited and she did exactly that. She walked up to me saying, oh, like, hey, like, I never got your name. What was it again? And that's when I introduced myself and decided to pull my prey in. That sounded so bad since I'm talking about high school, but to be honest, like, in a way, it was a part of the method, okay? That's all I'm saying. Going on from there, though, I remember I was basically just talking to, like, you know, this girl as she was literally right in front of me, and there was like a bunch of guys surrounding her as well, so it made the conversation more awkward. But I remember I just basically told her some basic things about myself, like I drove a car, I'm handsome, I actually make money on like the buffoons behind you. Like I said all the basic stuff that, you know, she basically wanted to hear and what most women want to hear. Because let's be real here, if you walk up to a girl and say, yeah, I play video games for 8 hours a day, make videos on it, and basically just sit and jerk off, there's no way, and I mean no way, she's gonna be interested in you. So I just told her what she wanted to hear, and she ended up liking me, and one thing led to another. She ended up wanting to hang out after school. After the first day of me hanging out with this girl, she wanted to hang out with me after school. I have no idea what magical powers I possessed, but let's just say the alpha male status that we're learning from Sneeko and Andrew Tate today are really showing me the ways of life. That sounds really bad because there's a lot of beef between Moist Critical and Sneeko that I really want to talk about, but we'll save that for another video. Anyways, going on with the story, I remember basically I ended up meeting up with this girl after school, and we ended up talking to her and ended up being really nice to her actually. Me and her, we actually really got along as we were just, you know, in my car driving around and basically doing the same thing over and over again. Because I was driving laps around the block that I was living on because I didn't really want to bring her home, to be honest. Because I knew my parents were not going to be happy with this kind of girl because, you know, she was one of those girls that basically thinks they earned everything or deserved everything. So I remember I ended up telling her, oh, like, what house do you live in? I remember I ended up typing down her address to just basically take her home because there was no way I was going to bring this girl home and do the devil's tango. And I remember when I ended up basically putting down her address, I realized that she lived in a nice area of our neighborhood, and she lived in like the hills, basically, as we call it down here in Vancouver. And me knowing this, I was actually very surprised. So what I decided to do was I basically ended up driving her home, and when I got to her place, I saw she lived in an awesome mega mansion. Like no joke, she lived in like one of those giant houses that have so much space to the point where you don't even know what to do with it. So I remember I ended up basically parking my car in her driveway, and me, as I'm like, you know, just telling her to like basically get the hell out of my car, I'm actually like terrified of you because you're so rich. She ended up looking at me saying, oh, like, do you want to like come inside? Sure, is what I ended up telling her. So I ended up basically getting out of my car, and I ended up basically walking into her house with her. When we walked in, I realized that there were some people at the door, basically kind of like looking kind of sketchy, looking at her and basically looking at me as if they wanted to literally beat me to a pulp. But luckily, this girl was there to be like my Lord and Savior, and she basically just let me pass through. And me and her, we were basically walking around the house, and she was showing me around. And one thing I realized that there was a lot of this one certain symbol that I don't know how to draw it for you. I don't remember it to this day, but I remember there was a symbol that was like basically around the house that I realized in like most paintings as well. I didn't ask about it because I didn't know what it was. But then afterwards, 2 minutes later, I remember as this girl was like showing me like her bedroom almost, or getting to her bedroom, out of nowhere, I see this guy in a white suit, kind of fat, you know, kind of overweight, look at me and say, hey, who are you? And he had like this really like heavy like Russian accent. I didn't know what to say. So I remember I turned around and said, oh, hi, like my name is Bubba. I ended up shaking his hand, and he looked
looked at me saying, what are you doing here? I ended up looking at him and I told him like basically how like, you know, I'm friends with his daughter at school and like, you know, I am nothing special. I am just a friend is basically what I was trying to get across to him. I remember he looked at me and started chuckling and then he shook my hand. And when he shook my hand, I remember I saw this same symbol tattooed on his wrist. And then that's when I knew this guy's some kind of boss, ringleader, cult leader, something that's going to basically get me killed. So I remember he ended up saying, okay, well, have fun now. And he ended up walking away. But as he walked away, two other like Mafia members basically ended up just walking up like, you know, behind him and looking at me, staring at me like they were going to literally beat me to a pulp. I can't express that enough. I was actually terrified. So I remember I was standing there thinking, okay, well, I'm just going to go into her bedroom. And that's what I did. I went into a bedroom and me and her, we kind of got cuddly together. And we started watching a movie on this giant TV that she had in her room. And I look at her and say, so like, what does your dad do for work? Because I was genuinely curious. And apparently she told me, oh, like, I don't know. I can't really like talk about it because like, I don't know. Apparently the government's after him today. Like, I don't know. It's some weird stuff. The government's after him is what I said afterwards. Yeah. The government, if you're listening, reminder, this was like 5 to 6 years ago. So if you're already like coming after my door to basically figure out who they are, I'm telling you right now, I have no idea where they went. But going on, I remember basically from there, I ended up, you know, basically cuddling with her still. And we ended up doing the devil's tango. But right after, I remember, I don't know where I heard the door knock, but it wasn't like a normal knock. Like your mom's going to walk in and give you cookies. It was one of those knocks where like basically like it was like someone's going to kill you kind of knock. So me being terrified, I remember I ended up trying to put on my clothes as fast as I can, but she couldn't put on her clothes fast enough because apparently she was slow as balls. So she ended up telling me to basically jump out the window. So that's what I did. I jumped out the window and ran towards my car, but I realized that my car was surrounded by men that were basically going to kill me if I ran towards my car, almost basically not wearing anything. So what I decided to do was I basically ended up calling my dad to come pick me up, and I left her car there and told her to drive her to my school tomorrow. And that's what she ended up doing. She drove my car to basically school the next day. And she asked me, why did I just go inside the car? And I told her how there was men surrounding the car. And then, yeah, one thing led to another. I basically friend zoned her. To this day, sometimes she does message me, but I don't know. I'm not really one for the Mafia. And if you're watching this, I'm sorry. It's just not for me. Anyways, guys, that's basically it for today's story. Make sure you guys do leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And like I always say, just full for more embarrassing stories. All right, peace out, guys.